Hi guys, it's Gilly Hunt here with my A to Z guide to Stampin' Up products, and I'm up to the letter W for watercolour, which is one of my favourite areas of artwork. So let's get started. The first thing you need to think about is what kind of papers you're going to watercolour on. And here we go, page 153 in the catalogue, and you need to come up to the top here where we have some really lovely watercolour papers. And here we go, here it is, here's a piece of it. It's a lovely, strong, solid, well-built paper, which will take the water and it will do some wonderful things for you, so well worth considering. But also do consider that you can watercolour as long as you're not using too much water, so you're not flooding the page, on most of our really good quality card and paper stock, because it is such good quality. So the other thing you're going to need to look for are some of, where are they? Here we go, some of the accessories, and they include StazOn ink. Now, if you're doing watercolour and you want an outline, then you need a solvent or alcohol ink, because that way you can watercolour over it and it won't pick up and it won't come off onto the brush or whatever you're using, and it won't smear and smear and smirch all over the place. So StazOn ink is what you're going to need. And the other things that you might choose to have are some water brushes and one or two other items. As we go through the catalogue, I will point out to you. But the first thing I'm going to point out is our watercolour pencils. So let's just take a look at our watercolour pencils first. We have two separate, I've got notes and all sorts here. Hang on, sorry, there we go. We have two separate selections. I've taken them out of their packet so you can see the colours a little bit easier. They come in a nice little neat package which you can keep them in, and I tend to keep mine in pots, but I do have the packages ready. There is one selection which is £15, and this is the first original collection that came out. And if you look, it's a real good rainbow of colours. It gives you an amazingly great selection. And then later on, Stampin' Up introduced another set, and these are equally lovely, but they're not quite as big a rainbow. So if I were you, even though this is a slightly more expensive set, I would try and go for this set first, and then definitely buy this set, because these colours complement these. So for example, let's just take, the blues. So we've now got Night of Navy, we've got Balmy Blue, we've got, here we go, Bermuda Bay and Pacific Point. So we've got a lovely selection of blues if you have both sets. One set on its own is lovely, but the two sets makes a much wider, richer range of blues. Likewise with the reds and pinks, so we can add to our other set Cherry Cobbler and Flirty Flamingo, and suddenly we've got a really nice big selection of the pinks and blues and greens, etc. So I would say this is your standard set and this is your complementary set to buy, but that's not how it's designed, so if you fancy this set first, you go for it. Okay, I would say, if I were you, if you are sharpening your pencils, rather than using a pencil sharpener, I would tend to use a blade of a knife, if you possibly can. It doesn't destroy the lead so much, and you can get a much nicer, finer point and things like that. So I would tend to always use a knife if it was me. So here we go. What can we do with those lovely pencils once we've got them? Well, I'm going to open this and we can just do some lovely actual scenes. We can do some lovely landscapes. We can use them as colouring pencils. So we use them as a colouring pencil, and then we can do some other things as well. So first and foremost, they're just great pencils. What we can also then do is we can take some more images, and let me just grab some pencils. What shall we have? Yellow and blue and red and that. And I'm just going for our first set. Okay, so I'm going to just show you how we can move the pencil around. The first thing you need to know, and I'm just going to do this in the corner, is that these are watercolour pencils. They're beautiful, they're soft, and if you give them instead of scratching side to side, if you give it a sort of slightly round and round movement, you get a lovely warm kind of texture to it. And then you take an aqua brush. Now I've got the old aqua brushes. The ones in the catalogue are very similar. We have a wide brush like this one and a narrow one. I've got to find a narrow one. There we go. So there's a narrow one and a wide one. But the ones that are newly in the catalogue also have a fabulous chisel topped, much wider brush for doing big bold strokes and backgrounds, which is great because that's a bonus. Sadly, I haven't been able to sort of sort myself out with them yet. I will, I'm sure. And then what we do is we just use the aqua brush, and look how lovely and rich that becomes. Okay, now the aqua brush, people worry, is going to now be dirty. So all we do is we get a little scrap of paper. Let me find one. Here we go, from the bin. A little scrap of paper, and we just run it up and down a couple of times, and look, we're back to clear water here, and I'm back to a clear brush. So that's how you clean your brush. You don't have to dip it in water or anything. The water itself goes in here. We unscrew it, and all you do is you drop water into there. And I have to say, there are all kinds of water brushes on the market, and I have used a fair number of them before I found Stampin' Up, and a lot of them leak, and a lot of them drip, and a lot of them cause you problems, or the valves don't work terribly well. And I am absolutely happy to 100% recommend these. They do not leak. I have one quite consistently in my handbag along with projects, so that if I'm stuck at a station or I'm in a doctor's waiting room or something, I can just have a quick bit of crafting time. So I carry them around all the time. They don't leak, they don't cause me any problems. Okay, so here goes. All I'm going to do is I'm going to colour. Oops. And in fact, what I might do is just bring in a piece, and then I can scribble right over the sides. Hooray! Oh, I didn't do the yellow. I was going to do that first. Let's put some yellow in here. Let's go pink. Ah. And some red. Let's go blue. Okay. And I'm going in the order of the rainbow, just so that the colours will blend nicely, hopefully, or rainbowish anyway. It's not quite rainbow. I'm not sure I've seen olive green in the rainbow, and I've certainly not seen brown, but you know, a little bit of artistic license. Here we go. So what I've done is I've just scribbled it away, and now I'm going to wake up that colour using my aqua brush. So I'm going to start here at one end, and I'm going to move along, because what I want is the whole lot to blend. So if I start in the middle and I come this way, then I'll end up with a line or a patch there. You've got to remember that, like with working with daubers or like with working with a brayer, if you stop, you get a line. So once you get going, get off and running and keep going. And sometimes, and I'm going to do it today, I'm going to do it today because I'm working. Oh gosh, I've just knocked everything over. Right, I'm going to do it today because I'm working and trying to talk at the same time. I'm going to put a little piece of tape so I can hold this end and that end will be held in place. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to keep this moving. And can you see it's almost like I'm pushing the line of the, you can almost see the line at which I'm working. And as I go along, it will blend them all between them. It's like I'm moving the ink and the water along the page, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And because I haven't stopped, I haven't paused, I've just kept going, kept going, kept going. What I get is a beautiful, smooth blend all the way through. Okay, isn't that pretty? Now I could do that with just one or two colours, I could do it with the rainbow colours. It's quite up to you how you choose to move your colours, but it's that constant movement that pushes the water through and connects with the pigment. So there you go. So that's one thing you can do with your water pencils as well as just your normal watercolouring. What about something else? Well, how about a little bit of black magic? Ooh, here we go. This is a fabulous little technique. We're going to use the Stampin' Pad Whisper White, okay, the craft ink. Now, I've already done mine because you do need to make sure it's totally dry. And I like to leave mine overnight if I'm going to do this technique. You don't have to, you can just leave it and then do it straight away. But the more you leave it, the totally drier and chalkier it is, therefore it's great to work with. So I've just stamped, using the Whisper White, I've just stamped a whole load of different, let's put those out of the way over there. I've just stamped a whole load of different little flowers, and I'm going to come in now with my colours. And all I'm going to do is put some colour into these. Now, this is something I could never do on a black piece of card because obviously the black piece of card is going to absorb all the colour. So by putting the white in first, I can now go over, and I don't even have to be that accurate, to be honest. I can kind of go over the edges a fair bit. Okay, let's grab some of the colours. A little bit of green, maybe. Okay. Pink. And so on and so on. And I'm not going to fill the whole thing because I'm sure you can see. Now you can either leave them like that or you can then give them just a very quick wash over. Now you've got to be very careful with this quick wash over because the craft ink is a dye-based ink, and so the actual ink, the white of the ink, will pick up a slight bit. So you've got to be just a bit careful you don't make a messy sort of squelchy mess. But isn't that an effective little technique to try? Here's one that I did earlier, and some of the bits that I was playing with. I did this on a very dark piece of rich raspberry. So you can also do it on Night of Navy, Merry Merlot. Some of the really lovely deep dark shades work really well for this technique. Okay, so that's another little thing for you to have a go at. Now, when you've had a go with your brush, we're talking about watercolour, so when you've had a go with your pencils, don't forget you can also use your inks, because Stampin' Up inks are water-based. So let's just bring in some water-based inks. So here's our inks. I've got a little selection here, and I've got a couple of images here stamped out, ready to go. Let me just, the trouble today is I've got a lot of watercolour things, and if I keep swishing them about, I'm going to end up spilling stuff. So I've got some colours. I've got crushed curry, which I'm going to open. and I'm just going to put them off camera so that I can use them. So you'll have to imagine that you can see them, okay? But I don't have room to put them all here and do the work. So I've also got Sahara Sand. I've got Smoky Slate. And I have Pear Pizzazz. And the one thing you'll notice is that I have a lot of sort of mucky inky bits on the back of the oh, what's it called, palette pad, I don't know what we're going to call it. I've really lost the plot today. Oh, you'll have to excuse me. I'm hoping to catch up again eventually. Right, so what I do is I squeeze, and that just drops a little bit more ink into there, and then I can use this as a painting palette, and that's why they look mucky. It's because they're designed to be that way. Okay, so let's pop those down. Now there's another thing you can do, and that is you can use your re-inkers. So the re-inkers that you can buy to top up your pads, you can also use to drop into your aqua brushes. Now the problem is, once you've got it in your aqua brush, then it's kind of using up your aqua brush. But I keep a couple, and this one in particular, you'll notice there's sky on it, and it's Bermuda Bay. It's mostly Bermuda Bay, but it's watered down to a point where I know that makes a great colour for sky. So I keep that so that whenever I need to do a little bit of sky on anything, I know that straight away I can use this. And can you see, it just gives me a lovely soft blue. So there's my basis for a sky. Let's show you. There we go. Ooh, there we go. There we go. And I know that that's almost ready to go straight away. Now you may decide that sky, maybe a skin tone, maybe there are one or two things that you use constantly that you want to keep, and therefore you just keep it in there all the time and it's ready to go. And then you buy another aqua brush just to use with your water. But you can always clean them out. You can run it under a tap, you can squish it out, and it will come perfectly clean. In fact, yesterday I did this one. This one had bright pink in, actually, from a previous project, and I've totally cleaned it out, and you'll find that that's utterly clean. So there's no worries, you haven't messed it up forever. I could clean this up even now. You might get a tiny bit of staining on the plastic, but it's certainly not going to colour it. Okay, so here we go. We're just thinking about almost going back now to painting with watercolour. So we've got our watercolour paper, and onto that I've done two things. I've done them differently. I've done this one with the stays on ink. So I know that, here we go, let's just do it rather than talk about it. Oh, I know that as soon as I start to paint, and what I'm doing, just to show you, let's just bring one or two in. I'm just picking up the ink that I've squished onto there. I'm just giving it a little go round to make sure it's well spread, and then I'm just going to put it onto here because I'm actually looking for a, here we go, I'm thinking of corn, I'm thinking of a cornfield here, although I must say that it does also look like lavender, or it could be wildflowers, but I'm going for a kind of cornfieldy sort of flowery feel. Okay, so I've picked up the ink from that. Let's go for another colour. Now remember, what do we do in between each time, just to make sure that this brush doesn't bring that yellow through? I just run it across a piece of paper until it goes clear. There we go, it's gone clear. So I'm perfectly fine to bring in, what colour should we go for next? A little bit of Smoky Slate. So let's come for her dress. And you've got to remember with an aqua painter that when you pick up the ink, that will be the darkest, okay? And then as you paint on, it will go more and more paler until it almost goes clear. Look how almost clear there. because actually what's happening is the water is feeding through. And so always start where you want the darkest, so where you want the shadows, so the back of her back here, the top of the gathering, where the gathering in the skirt is, and then fade it away out. And that way you'll get that lovely feel of the colour and the movement. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of Sahara sand and add a little bit of extra colour. Not very much, but it's just going to be enough to add a little bit of warm brown. I like to mix the greys and the warm browns because what you'll find is that the warm greys with the what I call a warm grey is one like Sahara sand, which has just a little bit more of a brown note to it. If I show you them side by side, right, this has got quite a, let's see if I can get it not shiny, right, this is quite a purpley blue, purpley bluey grey, and this is quite a browny grey. It's almost a pale brown, and so that will warm up. Can you see how it's just warmed up that piece there, and then it fades to a much more cooler colour. Okay, now don't be afraid when you're watercolouring just to add some details with pen, and I love ivory for skin tone, and I just want to put a bit of ivory skin tone in here. Okay, so don't be afraid to mix and match your blends and all sorts of things. Even though these are alcohol based, it doesn't really matter. Nobody's going to be going, ooh, you've used the wrong colour. Okay, so I need a little bit of green. Here we go, let's bring in some green, because I do want to have just a little bit at the front here. Now the other thing I am doing, you'll notice, I'm going in the direction that I want the feeling of the picture to be. So this is grass, so it's going upwards. So if I'm using my paintbrush in that direction, it's going to give me a feeling that the grass is growing. Now at the base, what I want to get that feeling of the ground. So I'm now going to go along here like this. And this will help ground it. Okay. Now I'm going to use my sky colour. Let's just get these out of the way. The sky colour, if you remember, I've already mixed up, and it was about 2 drops of Bermuda Bay. It was only a small amount in about half a bottle of water. And I'm going to use that just to put in my sky. I don't really want the sky to look kind of bluey, but what I do want it to do is I don't want that kind of white stark colour. Okay, so it's almost a negative. It's just a taking away from the brightness rather than adding colour. Now where's my, oh here it is. So let's make up this card. Okay, and that will show you side by side the 2 cards. Now then, how have I done this and that so differently? Well, this I've used the StazOn to give me my actual black outline, which I love. But I also love this idea of it looking like I actually painted it. It looks like there's no outline, there's no anything. And how I got that is by doing this. I actually used the dye-based ink, which was Smoky Slate, and I inked it up, then I stamped it off onto the paper, copy paper, then I stamped it off a second time, and then the third time I stamped it onto here. And it just gives you the very faintest outline, like that does. I don't know whether you can see that. If I bring it up a little closer, there we go. Now that very faint outline is enough for you to work with and you to paint in and fill in, but it's also, because it's dye-based, it very quickly kind of merges into the background. As soon as you start to work the colour in, it vanishes. So 2 completely different ideas, one with a clear outline and one with a less than clear outline, which gives you that feeling of a painted picture. I like both, actually, to be perfectly honest. Okay, right, how about some big washy backgrounds? So let's just bring in Mr. Fox. Oh, hold on, I've got quite a few little bits here to find. Here we go. Okay, now yet again I've squished. You can always tell when I've done a lot of watercolour work because I end up with mucky palettes. You can clean them up or you just leave them. They don't do any harm. They'll go away in the end. Okay, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do a water background. Now, I'm using the widest of our brushes, of the old style brushes. And what I'm going to do is just keep mixing until it gets really watery. And I'm just very slightly squeezing the brush, okay? Because I want a nice watery base. Now, with the new water brushes that we have in the catalogue, you could use that big wide one and it will give you a fabulous effect. So I'm now going to work quite quickly and I'm just going to scribble a base, a background. And I'm working quickly because I want it to stay wet whilst I'm working. There you go. If it starts to dry, that's when we get lines. Do you remember when we used the pencils? It's the same again. If you keep the brush moving and you keep the paint moving, then it stays lovely and well squished across. Squished across? Is that a thing? Anyway, the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Cajun Craze again. And I'm going to use it just as an ordinary little stamp for Mr. Fox, who I love. And I want to then show you that if you work quite quickly, whilst the ink is still wet, if you then work your aqua brush across him, what it will do is it will pick up the wetness of the ink, and it will allow you just to fill in your outline. Okay, because what's happening is it's just reactivating that ink. Now, it will sometimes do that if you leave it a while, but it certainly does it very well if you do it straight away. Okay, let me just get my brush clean. There we go. Now, what else am I going to do to that one? Well, I think what we might do is what I was talking about earlier, and that is mixing in some different medias and things. So I'm going to now bring in my pencils. A little bit of the darker green and a little bit of the paler green. And don't forget, you can mix your colours of your pencils to get a kind of a colour that you want, or to get it to look like it's fading into the background. And I might just have a little bit of the blue here. Okay, let's do this on the background so I don't... Okay, back to our... Make sure this is definitely... See, look, that's still got a little bit of that reddy brown. Oh, excuse me. You do need to be aware that if you've used reds or anything with a red sort of colouring in it, and the Cajun Crate has a sort of reddishness to the brown, that tends to just stick around a bit longer than the other colours. So just be aware of that. Okay, and yet again, I'm just going to take this for a little walk down the page. Oh, excuse me. My apologies for coughing. I've done quite well recently, but my husband and I suspect that we both have had a very mild version of the COVID virus, and it's left us both with quite long-lasting little coughs, which is a bit of a pain, but never mind. Okay, so here he is. Now then, what else am I going to do to him? Oh, I know. Let's try a bit of a happy birthday. Happy birthday. And I've just made up a little piece of Cajun Craze. I've tucked a couple of little flicks of ribbon in. I'm going to just pop that on. Let's take the backing off. Oh, I took the... There we go. Let's line that up. And we'll just add a little bit of glue. Oh no, we won't. I've already put the tape on. Oh, I'm ahead of myself here, look. A little piece of tape off the back. There you go. There you are, pretty little card, just using some watercolour effects and a nice wash background. So once we've started to do effects with the inks, let's carry on with some inks. So I'm going to now take and make you another card. Now all I've done this time is I have, let me just bring in some bits and pieces that I've got cut out. What else do I need? I need that, and I need something to do the wash with. So some of the newer stamp pads I find very, very stiff to press. I'm finding it very hard to press. So I'm not getting, look, I'm not getting very much ink. So I'm going to show you what I do. I bring in myself a little bit of a block, and I just pop some ink onto the block, and then I use it from the block. So if you also are somebody who doesn't like to have that watery, messy stuff inside your ink pad lid, then try popping it onto a little block like that. Okay, let's grab another little piece of background paper. Here we go. Now all I've done is taken a piece of paper and I have put some different sized and different widths of washi tape across it, and I'm just going to wash over that. So I'm going to pick up my ink, and again I'm just going to let it run a bit because I want to get it nice and watery. Okay, and I'm going to start at this end. Now it doesn't matter if I stop now because I'm on the washi tape, so I can just do each little stripe and go back for a bit more ink. What I do need to do though is once I'm going, I need to keep that moving along if I want to get a nice smooth line. Okay, so likewise, let's go along and keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving, because what we don't want to do is stop midway. If you stop, you will get a break line. Okay, now I might just add a little tiny bit more ink to the block because I'm not sure that's going to be quite strong enough colour. We want a distinctive pattern here. We don't want it to look too wishy-washy. Okay, so add a little bit more, get it going. And again, once I'm going, let's keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving. And again, keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving. And that's why it's nice to just have a little bit of a background. I normally work on a glass mat, but when I work on a glass mat, all you will see, as you can see from here, you can see the shine of the lights from the film. You literally won't get anything other than sheen and shine. So here we go. Let's take that out of the way. And all we're going to do now is peel these off. Oh dear, that one was just... oh, bit of a disaster here. Oh, I have done this overnight, and what I have realised, here's a good lesson for you. I'm not going to redo it. I'm just going to give it to you as a lesson. When I put these on, I've left them on for too long. And what's happened, look, is that they've started to actually stick down. So the washi tape would normally peel away easy peasy like that one did and give you a nice sharp line. Let's see if this one will do. But what's happening There you are, look, those two have done it beautifully. But what's happening here is I've left it overnight and I think the stickiness has probably sunk in. So my apologies for it not looking as great as it could, but it's a great way of showing you kind of what's happened. So I'm going to see if I can rescue it to a certain extent by simply coming in and filling it in a little bit. Okay, it's not going to look great, but it'll show you. I promise you it works totally fine and perfectly well in the normal run of the mill, the run of things. But then of course I wouldn't be leaving washi tape overnight. I'd done it because I'd set up the filming ready for you. And what I was going to do, but I'm not going to mess that up, I'm going to go back and do another one later after the film. I'm going to do that. I'm going to add a little piece of silver, and I was going to put, I will do it just to show you. Here we go. I was just going to put a lots of love for Christmas, and then there's the lovely die cut across. And that would look beautiful if these were nice crisp stripes, and they would be crisp stripes if I hadn't have left it overnight. So there's your lesson. Don't leave things overnight. Get on with crafting whilst you're at it. Okay, I want to carry on. Despite the disaster, let's hope we don't get any more disasters. But sometimes we learn from our disasters, so, you know, I'm kind of a bit chilled about it, to be honest. Between that and coughing, it's a great film, isn't it? My huge apologies. It's turning into a bit of a nightmare, this one. Okay. Now here I have some extra things that I want to show you to do with watercolours again. Because we have lots and lots of other things that you can use. We've already shown you that you can use the re-inker to make your aqua brushes coloured, like I did with the sky. You can also add them to spritzer bottles, and these spritzer bottles are also available. And let me just show you what the spritzer will do. Let's bring in a bit of a base to put it in. I don't want everything, the kind of look I'm having this today. There you go. Now, doesn't that make some fabulous, let's get rid of the shiny bits. Using a spritzer bottle gives you some lovely effects. Great for backgrounds. You can, depending on how high you hold it or close you hold it, you can get some great effects. And of course you can layer lots of different colours together with these. So that's the spritzer bottle. The other thing you can do with the spritzer bottle, I'm going to just show you now, let's just come across, is you can scribble on a block with marker pens, or you can use your colours. So let's just have a go. Here we go. Let's just put that on there. I've lost my colour. Where's my other colour? Let's use that instead then. So let's come in from the other side, and I'm now going to add some colour to this side. Okay, always use your palest colour first, because then you don't damage things. Now I've lost my piece of, oh goodness me, I'm just going to run, no, there it is, I found it. Okay, now what I can do now is I can bring my spritzer bottle in again, but instead of the coloured one, I'm going to use plain water. So spritz that. Okay. And now I'm going to pop my piece of card down on it. Just press it down to catch that water. Pull it up, and look what a fabulous effect that has. Okay, you'll never get two the same. You'll never get one that's perfect. You'll always get them different. And I'm just going to use my chamois just to pick up that little bit of very wet ink so that I can show you more clearly without it dribbling everywhere. So another idea to use with your watercolours. Fabulous ways of getting backgrounds completed. So let's just add a little something to make that look super, super, super. So here's Mr. Fox. I'm going to bring him back. Isn't that lovely? That gives you a lovely sort of autumnal kind of fox to my mind. And we could cut that out and he would look fantastic on a card. So spritzer bottles, another thing to play with your watercolours. Fabulous. Okay, now here's another accessory to play with your colours, and that is the blender pen. Now I'm also going to bring in our Many Marvellous Markers. I can never say that. Many Marvellous Markers. Okay, now here again I've used StazOn because we're working with watercolours. These markers are dye based, so they're water based, which is why they're very good for colouring your stamps with. They are not the blender pens. You cannot do this with the blender, the stamping blend pens. So you can't do it with these because they are alcohol based. So it must be the dye based markers. Okay, and what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to put a little piece of white paper behind that so you can see it a little bit more clearly. So let's just do that. I'm going to just scribble a little bit of ink from my markers onto here. Now again, I could take a bit of ink from my pads, or I could use a re-inker for this, but I love to use my marker pens, and this is something I love to do if I'm away on holiday and I just fancy taking a little something, or if I'm going away to maybe a conference or a meeting and I know I'm going to be in a hotel room on my own at night. I can take a little pencil case full of these, and I can take a couple of lovely images already stamped, and I just need to take one of these or something to scribble on. And I sometimes can take maybe a piece of window paper, a window sheet, because that works perfectly too, so that's lightweight to take. So here's my image. Now what does the blender do? Well, the blender is really better described as a lifter and mover pen rather than a blender. Don't think of it for blending. Think of it for lifting and moving ink around. So for example, I'm going to take some of the yellow and I'm just going to put some on here. And all we've done is basically we've turned this into a wonderful, wonderful pen. But not only a wonderful pen, but one where I can blend and fade my colours. Now you might say, well, why on earth are you bothering with this when you could just pretty much straight away use this colour? Now if I go for this colour, the problem is these aren't blenders, so it's quite dark in the first place. Now you might want a darker colour, but here's what these do beautifully, right? I can now pick up some of the orange, and I'm going to pick up another bit of the yellow, and I'm going to blend these together. Okay, and I'm going to take a little bit of the red, and I'm just going to work on the edge. Okay, and I'm going to scribble it off and get a little bit more of the orange. And this is where what I can do is I can lift and move the inks together. So can you see that we're now blending? Just let's have a look at this one little petal that I've just done. And can you see we've blended from yellows through the oranges to the reds. Now this is a technique that takes a lot of time and a lot of care, and I'm going to just pop in a leaf or two. Okay. Now, have you noticed that each leaf I've done has been just slightly lighter than the last one? Because this works almost in the same way as the aqua brush does, in that when you pick up the ink, that's at its most concentrated, and then over time it gets slowly and gradually diluted. And so we can work with that to give ourselves different colours. So I'm now going to go into the base of this leaf with the darker and the darker. And now I'm going to just slowly, as I use it, fade it out. Can you see? So it started dark and it's fading out because it went lighter. Now I could spend quite a lot of time and effort and make that absolutely beautiful. And I think these are probably the nicest things I have to work with, but they're not something I can show you in a quick demonstration because it just takes time, and you literally build up your colours, you build up your images until, you know, we can go quite dark here. I'm almost just dotting it on. Okay, but it does take a while. And there, look where I've just worked on that. We've got a beautiful faded blend across, and we can blend the colours, we can blend the styles. So that's another really fabulous way to use watercolour, but watercolour in a much more controlled and refined manner. Okay, now I'm going to just give you a couple more ideas before I leave you today. And I want you to think, oh my goodness. I don't want you to think, oh my goodness, I've got to be neat and tidy. I want to show you these. The lovely thing with watercolour, absolutely my favourite thing with watercolour, is to actually go over the lines on purpose. This is nice, this is neat, this is tidy, but I love the energy in this. Can you see what I've done? All I've done is I've scribbled across with the pencils as I've been working, right across the image. And then I've worked into the image. So once I've got that image done, I've worked just a little bit of extra colours in to give it that kind of solid edge. But I've allowed it to continue to escape. Can you see? Isn't that lovely? And you don't need to be neat and tidy. The other thing you can do, here we go, same kind of thought, is we can just get sloppy as we fill in the images. So let's just do a little tiny one of these for you. Let's just grab that green. Here it is. So when I've been doing the leaves, all I did was this. I got some of this beautifully mixed together, so it's watery. Remember, it needs to be watery. And then I've just gone like that, and I've gone literally over the edge. Over the edge. Now it requires that you go quite a bit over the edge, and I know this sounds silly, but if you only go cautiously over the edge, it looks like someone that can't colour in properly. It looks like you haven't stuck within the lines. Whereas where you've got big areas like this, it shows that that was the effect you're going for. That you were going for that lovely watercolour splash and splosh kind of effect. So don't be a cowardy custard. Be brave, be bold, and really go beyond the boundaries. And it's a great way of colouring and using your inks and your pencils. Okay, and last but not least, I just want to share with you a little sampler I made. Be brave. Watercolour is fun. Let's put it that way up because then the drips work better. So let's just talk you through what I've done. This one, there's a little screwed up piece of cling film dipped into wet ink and then splodged over the top. This was just a spritzer bottle and a couple of extra spritz in different places to get that concentrated feel. This was me just wetting the page thoroughly and then holding my brush down. And as I held the brush down, the ink ran one way and the other. This is actually lovely and textured. I love this. This is actually a kitchen roll, and all I did was soak it in ink. I spritzed it with the ink spray, and then I scrunched it into a ball, tied it up overnight, let it totally dry naturally. In fact, I put it on the windowsill. But do remember, and I'm going to say this from experience, because I had to repaint a windowsill once because I forgot to put something underneath it, and I actually dyed the paint. So put a plate or something underneath to catch the drips. That's just scrunched up paper, and then I only partially opened it. I didn't totally flatten it out, and that gives you lovely backgrounds, particularly nice for if you want to do something Christmassy and you want to pop let's say a die cut or something over the top. Isn't that pretty? This was salt, ordinary house salt, and this one, where it's sort of more granularly, was rock salt. This was a little bit of bleach, which gave me that explosion. I can't remember what that was. Oh, I know, sponge. That was done with a sponge, just an ordinary sponge. And this was just a line at the top, very wet, and I let it drip. So what I want you to think about, and I'm going to leave you with this card, which is one of my favourite watercolour cards that I've made recently. Experiment. Practice, try it out. Remember, you can't control it. It can't control you. It's just a fun thing that you're doing together. And sometimes you'll make fabulous things, and other times you'll make terrible things. But in the long run, it's just a piece of paper. And to get lovely cards with wonderful effects where people are going to go, wow, how did you get that looking like a sunset? Fantastic. It's very exciting. So do have a go. Get yourself some watercolour paper, get yourself some aqua brushes, some watercolour pencils, and just have a ball. Okay, and I'm coming back with X next, which I'm going to kind of cheat because I really ran out of letters, and X is going to be for extreme, and it's extreme cutting and embossing. So we're going to have a look at the machines that will cut and emboss for us. Okay, thanks very much. Bye bye.